Good day, grade 9 students of Cavite State University Laboratory Science High School. So this would be our first asynchronous online class for our subject Research 2. So I hope you're doing fine, doing great. So hindi ko na po papatagalin yung aking introduction. I will now start sharing my screen with you. So let me check my YouTube channel first if that is up and running na yung ating live stream. Check lang muna po natin. Oops, check ko sandali lang po. Check lang muna po natin. Iayos ko lang po yung settings natin kasi baka masyadong maliit yung screen natin. Okay? So again, magandang araw sa aking mga grade 9 students ng Cavite State University Nahi Campus Laboratory Science High School. I hope you're doing fine. Again, this is the first asynchronous online class for our subject Research 2. And this one is actually a review of what you have been doing during your Research 1. I just hope na during pandemic nakapag-explore pa rin kayo sa Research 1 subject ninyo. And I think this would be the first time that you're going to be in your school for face-to-face classes natin. But nevertheless, dahil nga research 2 itong subject natin, we will try our best to create a productive research school year, research-based school year to. So magagawa tayo ng mga researches or gagawa tayo ng isang research proposal at the end of the school year, just like what I have mentioned to you during our orientation class. So this topic will be all about a review of what you have been doing during your research 1 subject. So this one will be all about science process skills. These are the skills that you should have, not just for my subject only, but generally sa lahat ng mga gawain natin sa pang-araw-araw na buhay, magagamit natin itong mga science process skills na ito. Okay? So tingnan natin, ano nga ba yung pag-aaralan natin sa science process skills? Obviously, we're going to discuss the two types, the basic and integrated science process skills. So medyo maikli lang yung discussion natin. Actually, this one is actually based on the lecture notes that I have gave you. So if you want to have a at least itong asynchronous online class, you can attend our class or you can watch this one during your free time. Pero kung sanay naman kayo na magbasa lang, that's good. Pwede na kayo mag-focus na lang sa mismong discussion na pinresent ko po sa ating lecture notes. So simulan muna natin sa basic science process skills. So ano nga ba yung basic science process skills na yan? Science process skills form the foundation for scientific method. Okay? I just hope that by heart, alam niyo na yung scientific method na yan. Okay? So this one shows you an overview of what is our scientific method. It's actually a procedure. It's actually, sinasabi nila it's a procedure, pero sinasabi na ng iba, scientific method is a way of life. Okay? Hindi lang siya para sa science lamang. Ginagamit natin yan sa pang-araw-araw natin mga buhay, hindi lang natin nare-realize. So itong mga science process skills na to can be integrated together when scientists and students like you design and carry out experiments. So magagamit natin for sure yung mga science process skills na i-discuss natin sa araw na ito once na nagsimula na tayo mag-draft, mag-craft at mag-create ng proposal para sa ating research. Tandaan niyo po, during our orientation, nabanggit ko na generally, ang output lang ng research 2 is a research proposal. But I will try my best that we can create at least a simple research na pwede nating maipresent para hindi lang maging stagnant na hanggang research proposal lang tayo. Gagawa rin tayo ng isang research na magagamit natin itong mga science process skills na ito. So this shows you an overview. This is a good representation of scientific method. As you can see there, we have observation, the formulation of hypothesis. We can create or design experiment para ma-test yung ating hypothesis. We eventually conduct the experiment. Then eventually we gather results, whether it's observed, expected, we compare those results. Then we draw conclusion. And then from that conclusion, pwede nating balikan yung experiment natin para ma-refine yung hypothesis or pwede nating i-report yung findings na yan and repeat. We can repeat the whole thing so para ma-test natin further yung mga hypothesis na yan. So I hope these terms are not new to you. At least sana po ina-discuss na sa inyo ito during your research 1 subject. This subject is more on the application of what have been discussed during your grade or your research one subject. So these process skills can be applied when carrying out a fair test experiment. Pag sinabi nating fair test grade 9, it's a test in which you only change one variable, okay, while controlling the other variable when attempting to answer a scientific question. Fair tests should always be employed once you are doing an experiment or a research in this case. Okay? As much as possible, dapat fair test lagi. Meron tayong kinokontrol while the other are yun lang yung chine-change natin. So I hope the term variable, independent are not new to you. At least na-encounter niyo na dapat yan last school year. Okay? So gagamitin daw natin itong mga science process skills na to para tayo ay makapag-perform, makapag-conduct ng isang fair test experiment na kung saan binabago lang natin ang isang variable and the rest pwede natin silang kontrolin. So changing only variable allows the person conducting the test or experiment to know that there are no other variable may have impacted the results of the test. Para daw madali nating matandaan ang ibig sabihin ng fair testing, cow, smooth, softly, CMS. We change one thing, we then measure and observe, and the rest are same for everything else. So ganyan po ang fair testing. We will try simple experiment to achieve this fair testing na ito. Mga simple experiment na magagamit natin itong science process skills na ito. Okay? The 6 basic science process skills. Doon na tayo ngayon sa basic. Doon muna tayo sa basic. The 6 basic are observing, inferring, measuring, communicating, classifying, and predicting. So titingnan natin ano nga ba yung nilalaman ng 6 na basic science process skills na yan. Let's have the first one, observing or observation. It's a process where we use our senses to gather information about an object or event. I think sa inyong activity sheet, I have asked you ano yung mga sense organs na ating katawan, and I also asked you to give situations wherein we use those senses. For example, pag sinabi natin, nagpunta tayong sa Mount Palay-Palay, sa Ternate Maragondon area, sinabi natin na ito ay mahangin at magubat, we use our feelings, yung ating touch o yung pakiramdam natin at yung paningin natin para ma-describe ang isang lugar. That one is observing. Nagpunta tayo sa beach na malapit sa ating university, nakita natin na maraming madumi, maraming kalat. You will tell me na the beach or the coastline near Cavite State University na campus is full of garbage. That's observation. We went to the dump we went to the landfill and it's very smelly. Masyadong mabaho. That's also observation. We stand near an LRT line and the LRT is so loud or maingay. So those observations, those statements are actually observations kung saan ginagamit natin yung mga senses natin or sense organ natin. And that's the most basic process skill or science process skill that we have here on our list, observation. Once we use our senses and we gather information from our environment, that is observation. Okay? Pag-inferring, it is when we make an educated guess about an object or event based on previously gathered data or information. Okay? Ayusin ko lang po, sandali Nagkamali ng statement dito, sandali lang po. Nagkamali po. But anyways, pag sinabi natin inferring, this is actually related to hypothesis, formulation of hypothesis. Example, let me go back. Pasensya na po. Balik lang po ako sa aking presentation. For example, inferring again, it is when we make an educated guess about an object or event based on previously gathered data or information. For example, I have shown you a map of Cavite and you found out na magkatabi yung Alfonso Cavite at saka Tagaytay. And based from your experience, based from your observation before, na malamig ang Tagaytay. Nakita mo sa mapa na yung Alfonso ay katabi ng Tagaytay. So, pag nag-infer ka, you make an educated guess, sasabihin mo na siguro yung Alfonso Cavite ay malamig dahil malapit ito sa Tagaytay. What is the previous information that we have here? Yung near Tagaytay, because you have studied the map na yung Alfonso Cavite is near Tagaytay. And yung inference natin dito is yung pagsabi natin na baka o siguro malamig sa Alfonso Cavite kasi malapit ito sa Tagaytay. So that's an inference. So it's an educated guess. We do not have the exact data, we do not have the exact observation from Alfonso Cavite, but because of a previously gathered information or data, we can give an educated guess about a situation. Okay? This is actually part of hypothesis. Okay? So formulation of hypothesis is actually part of inference or inferring. So magagamit natin yan later on sa pag-discuss natin ng research methods. Let's continue. Measuring. It occurs when you use both standard and non-standard measures or estimates to describe the dimensions of an object or an event. In this example, we use a ruler to measure the height of a rice seedling 3 days after germination. Forgive me kung hindi rice seedling yung nasa picture, pero you get the point. We use the ruler to measure the height. So this is the standard. Pero meron din tayong mga non-standard measures wherein we can use surveys, scales, ranges, para makapag-measure tayo ng isang variable. Okay? But this one is the most obvious sa inyo. Yung paggamit ng mga measuring devices like thermometer, ruler, balance, graduated cylinder, that's part of measuring. Okay? It's actually a skill na kailangan nyo talaga ma-master lalo't kayo ay mga science-oriented students. Communicating. It is when you use words or graphic symbols to describe an action, objects, or event. So as you can see here, we have a graph showing the growth of radish. So instead of just putting numbers in a table, we can use graphics, we can use drawings, we can use illustrations to convey yung gusto nating sabihin regarding an observation. So mas madali nating maintindihan niya. Actually, this is also a skill na kailangan matutunan ninyo lalo na kayo ay exposed na sa mga computer. Dapat nagagamit na natin yung mga softwares, mga applications like Excel para tayo makapag-generate ng mga graphics, ng mga tables, ng mga graphs na para mas madali nating maintindihan yung mga data or information na nag-gather natin from our observation. Okay? So I think I will try my best na ma-integrate ang computer science dito sa part na ito, lalo't kayo gagawa ng research eventually. Classifying. This is the grouping or ordering of objects or events into categories based on properties or criteria. So paggugrupo-grupo. Okay? So pagka-classify, paggugrupo, pagkakasunod-sunod, pagsusunod. Base sa mga categories na sinet natin. So for example here, we placing all rocks having certain grain size or hardness into one group. So pinagsasama-sama natin daw yung mga bato na magkakaumuka ang tigas at grain size. We are classifying organisms. Di ba nakakapag-classify tayo ng vertebrates, invertebrates. Nalalaman natin through classifying kung ito ba ay insect or hindi. Ito ba ay primate or hindi, mammals or hindi. So that one is part of this what we call classifying or classification. Okay? Predicting. It is when we state the outcome of a future event based on a pattern of evidence. Saan ang pinagkaiba ng predicting sa inference? Di ba sa inference, sinasabi natin, for example, yung Alfonso Cavite daw ay malamig dahil malapit sa Tagaytay. Di ba parang nagpe-predict din tayo? No. Inference is different sa predicting. Pag sinabi nating inference, we are actually trying our best to connect yung mga variables na maaaring makaapekto sa yung independent sa dependent variables. Sa predicting kasi, we are looking forward. Ano yung pwedeng mangyari after or sa future events. So, based sa pattern ng evidence. For example, here, napansin mo na on the first day, naglagay ka ng fertilizer, the plant grew rapidly. So, pwede natin i-predict na pag nagpatuloy tayo sa pagdagdag ng fertilizer, mas lalaki yung halaman natin. Pag naglagay tayo ng tamang dami ng tubig, patuloy natin nilalagyan yan, we can predict o pwede nating mahulaan na magpapatuloy sa paglaki yung ating object. That's predicting or prediction. We are stating, sinasabi natin yung pwedeng mangyari sa hinaharap base sa pattern ng evidence. Yung inference, we are actually making an educated guess based from the evidence we have gathered. Okay? So, I hope you see the difference between inference and prediction. So, let's review. So, we have here a statement and you're going to classify it based on the science process skill that we discussed earlier. For example, you say that the plants without the fertilizer will grow slowly after analyzing their changes in height from previous week. Is it predicting, inferring, communicating, or classifying? Again, you say that the plants without the fertilizer will grow slowly after analyzing their changes in height from the previous week. Okay? So 10 seconds. Again, you may use the comment section for your answer. Please use the comment section for your answer. Predicting, inferring, communicating, or classifying. 10 seconds. The answer for this one is predicting. Okay? Because we have a trend. Nakikita na natin yung trend na habang hindi tayo naglalagay ng fertilizer, lumiliit o bumabagal yung paglaki ng halaman. This is not just an inference. It's actually predicting. We are predicting what will happen kapag kinuntian o pinagpatuloy natin ang hindi paglalagay ng fertilizer sa halaman. Pero pag nilagay natin dyan, ang statement dyan is that if we do not put fertilizer sa ating plants, the plants will grow slowly. Okay? That's an inference. Okay? Because we have a previously gathered data and we're just making an educated guess. Saying that the person who used a pencil made a lot of mistakes because the eraser was well worn is an example of communicating, inferring, observing, classifying. Saying that the person who used a pencil made a lot of mistakes because the eraser was well worn, is it communicating, inferring, observing, or classifying? Please use the comment section for your answer. 10 seconds. The answer for this one is inferring. You use a flowchart to explain the different steps in your research project. Again, the statement is you use a flowchart to explain the different steps in your research project. Is it communicating, inferring, observing, or classifying? Again, the choices are communicating, inferring, observing, or classifying. 10 seconds. The answer for this one is communicating, because in this case we use a graphic organizer, a flowchart, to show the steps of our research. Okay, so sandali lang po mayroon lang po akong iano po. So let's continue. Describing the weather at Naik during December as cool and windy. So sinasabi daw natin na yung weather daw sa Naik kapag December daw ay malamig at mahangin. Is it communicating, inferring, observing, or classifying? Okay, so the answer for this one is observing. We use our senses para masabi na malamig at mahangin sa lugar na yan kapag panahon ng December. Using a meter stick to measure the length of a table in centimeter. Is it measuring, communicating, observing, classifying? This one is a very easy one because may clue o may word na pwede na natin gamitin as a context clue. Is it measuring, communicating, observing, or classifying? So the answer for this one is obviously measuring. After careful observation, you divide the different organisms you collected in the beach at Naik into vertebrates and invertebrates. Okay? So, after observation, you group the organisms into vertebrates and invertebrates. The answer is, let's see, 10 seconds. Again, use the comment section for your answer. The answer for this one is classifying. Let's continue. Now, let's move on to the integrated process skills. So sa integrated process skills naman, we are just combining different basic science process skills para makagawa tayo ng mga, kaya nga sa tinawag na integrated. We are combining, sabi natin, pinagsasama-sama natin yung mga basic process skills na na-discuss natin kanina. So this one is a little bit higher level kumpara sa mga basic process skill. So bago tayo makarating sa integrated science process skills, dapat at least medyo meron na tayong basic concept about the basic science process skill that we have. So I will try my best na sa buong school year natin, we will be integrating, or we will be isasama natin sa mga lessons natin yung mga basic science process skills na ito. So the first one here is controlling variables. Pag sinabi natin controlling variables, it occurs when you are able to identify variables that can affect an experimental outcome, keeping most constant while manipulating only the independent variables. So in this case, may apply din natin dito, unang-una kagad yung observation. Kasi nakikita natin na kailangan na nating i-control yung variable na yan. Pwede rin natin magamit yung inference and also measuring, yung measurement. So those three things can be used to control variables. Actually, marami pang pwede nating i-incorporate dito sa controlling variables. Pwede rin tayong gumamit ng classifying skills kasi we can now classify if this is a dependent, independent variable, extraneous, or it can be controlled or whatsoever. So controlling variable is one of the first integrated science process skills. Defining operationally is stating how to measure a variable in an experiment. Okay? This one is not just how to measure. Nalalaman na rin natin kung paano natin dinedefine ang isang bagay sa ating experiment. So for example, when we say soil moisture, hindi lang sinasabi natin yung soil moisture is the amount of water sa ating ganito. Pag sinabi natin defining operationally, we can create meaning for a process using our own background knowledge. So pwede natin sinabi natin yung soil moisture. Soil moisture is the amount of water present in the soil after doing the experiment. So that's defining operationally. So hindi lang siya measuring. So pwede na rin natin gumamit ng basic observation skills para mas ma-define natin ang isang variable sa isang experiment. Pwede natin masabi na seedling height is defined as the height of the seedling after 3 days. So that's the seedling height. It is defined operationally based from your experiment or based from your proposal. Okay, formulating hypothesis, stating the expected outcome of an experiment. So this one is a classic example of an hypothesis, classical conditioning by Pavlov. So as you can see here, before conditioning, pag nakakita daw yung aso ng dog food, naglalaway siya. Okay? Then, sumunod na experiment, part na experiment niya, we ring the bell, pinatunog natin yung bell, there is no response. Kasi hindi naman pagkain yan eh. Sa third experiment, nagpakita ng pagkain habang nagpapatunog ng bell. And the response of the dog is nagsasalivate siya o naglalaway. And after conditioning, nung pinatunog natin yung bell, the dog starts salivating na. Kasi he's expecting na may pagkain na yan. So, nakikita natin sa classic example na ito ng experiment is that we can formulate hypothesis based from what we have, based from the observations that we have from our experiment. So it's not just simply inference. We are actually stating na yung ano yung mangyayari. So pag kinontrol natin yung isang variable, ano mangyayari sa dependent variable na ito? Pag tinaasan natin dami ng fertilizer, what will happen to the dependent variable? So we can now formulate this hypothesis. Nakikita na natin sa ating experiment, sa ating activity, yung mga bagay na pwede maka-apekto sa ating research. Don't worry, this is just an overview. Iisa-isahin din natin yan eventually once na we start doing our research proposal. Interpreting data. It's not enough that we measure the data. It's not enough that we gather information from our observation. Pero mahalaga na ang ating mga data ay ma-organize at ma-analyze ng mabuti para tayo ay makagawa ng mga conclusion mula rito. Recording data from the experiment in a data table and forming a conclusion which relates trends in the data to variables. It's not enough to measure. Nabilang natin yung dami ng dahon ng halaman, nabilang natin yung haba ng iginalaw ng isang object. It's not enough. So kapag na-organize natin na mabuti yung data na yan, we can actually draw conclusion. Pwede tayong makapag-generalize from that data. So it's not simply measuring, it's not simply communicating and classifying. We are trying our best na mas madali nating maipakita or ma-represent yung mga data na yan sa ating mga tao. Experimenting, and this one will be a mainstay sa ating subject and sa inyo bilang science-oriented students. It includes asking an appropriate question, stating a hypothesis, identifying and controlling variables, operationally defining those variables, designing a fair experiment, conducting the experiment, and interpreting the results of the experiment. This actually summarizes the diagram that we have here. Okay? So yan yung gagawin natin eventually sa ating subject. And lastly on our list, formulating models, creating a mental or physical model of a process or event after gathering all those data, after getting all those information, observation, inference, prediction, and all those things. We can create now a model that will serve as a mental or physical model ng isang process or ng event mula sa ating experiment. Pwede tayo makaka-create na ng isang sagot or isang malinaw na sagot mula sa ating experiment. So that's a formulation of model. This is actually a very high level science process skill kasi talagang literal na pinagsasama-sama na natin lahat ng mga basic science process skills that we have discussed earlier. So once you create a model, actually yung mga scientists natin, kaya sila nagiging sabi natin na nakakapasok sa mundo ng research because they started creating models. Kaya sila nananalo ng mga awards, they started publishing researches, they are actually producing models. Actually, last year, yung Nobel Prize for Physics, sila yung mga physicists kung saan sila yung nakapag-create ng model kung bakit gumagana yung ating climate. So, paano nga ba yung interaction ng mga different variables and factors sa ating environment at paano ito nakaka-apekto sa ating climate? They won the Nobel Prize for, I think it's physics yata kung hindi ako nagkakamali. Okay? So, next week, by the way paalala ko lang po, next week po is magkakaroon po awarding ceremony na po ng ating, hindi pala awarding ceremony, announcement ng mga Nobel Prize for Chemistry, Physics, Medicine, Physiology, Literature, Economics. So watch out for that one. So actually this ends our discussion for this day. So let me go back to my platform. So this ends our discussion for this day. So I hope you learned something regarding our basic science process skills. Don't worry, these science process skills ay hindi lang magtatapos sa lesson ito. Ito po igagamitin natin all throughout sa mga lessons natin sa research 2. And I hope na magagamit nyo rin po sa ito sa ibang mga subjects, hindi lang po sa science subjects ninyo. Ito ay magagamit nyo rin for sure sa iba pa mga presentations sa mga subjects ninyo ngayong grade 9 kayo at sa mga susunod pa mga subject. So again, dito na po, by the way sa October, sa pagbabalik, sa next week po sa face-to-face classes natin, ang klase ng Research 9, I think it's Research 2, sorry, Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday next week, October 5 and 6. So I hope to see you next week. We're going to process our activity mula sa pinamigay kong lecture notes. So doon natin sasagutan, aaralin natin yung mga items na nakalagay sa ating activity. So just make sure that you're done or through with that activity para next week processing na lang po tayo. So I hope you learned something today regarding science process skill and I hope to see you next week. Thank you and goodbye.